What's it like being a liberal from Alabama? Well, I sometimes compare it to being like a Spetsnaz Russian commando, like the ultimate fighting commandos. They just dump them out. They like drop them over Chechnya and just give them a butcher knife and like a cloth sack or something like that and some rope and say, don't come back till you've got 100 scalps of would-be terrorists. And if you do, we'll kill your wife before you come back. I think people that are liberals in Alabama, they have been battle ready and battle tough and hardened in a way that I don't think a lot of coastal liberals have been tested in that way. I don't think they understand it really. In the year 2000, in my high school, they had a mock election. I was a freshman, but they said vote for Al Gore or George W. Bush. Vote for who you would pick for president. And I voted for Al Gore, but when the results came in, it was like 1,000 people voted for Bush and 19 voted for Gore. So that's where you're at, where it's not even 2% of people agree with you. Look at the last Democratic governor of Alabama, Don Siegelman. Now, we've had Bob Riley, who sucked, Robert Bentley, who sucked so bad, he would have been impeached, but he resigned. Now, Kay Ivey, who everybody says is a daytime drunk, and Roy Moore and all these different people that are just crazy. And Siegelman was the last Democratic governor that we had. And he was great. And he was so good that they put him in jail. So he served one term. First, they fucked him out of it in re-election where they stole it and gave it to Bob Riley. Then the second he lost re-election and wasn't governor anymore, Bill Pryor opened an investigation. And then he went looking for a reason to have an investigation. They just started a general, like, I'm sure there's some corruption out there. We'll find something. Made up something eventually to put him in jail for. And he spent about 6 years in jail. I think he's still under house arrest or something like that. So put him in prison in Louisiana. They put him in handcuffs and manacles. It looked like Hannibal Lecter taking him out of the courtroom. Put him in a Louisiana prison so his family would have a harder time getting to him, and it would just complicate his legal defense and things like that. They couldn't coordinate as easily. And Obama never pardoned him, even though he should have. Everybody said that he should have pardoned Siegelman and Larry Langford, but especially Siegelman, and he never did. Larry Langford is another one that was put in prison, another Democrat from Alabama that everybody thought should not have been in jail. And the National Party abandoned us, basically. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's the way it is. When you've got people like Siegelman and Langford that can go to prison, and a Democratic president like Obama cannot pardon them for 8 years. When they look at Alabama as a hopeless state, when Senate candidates, like the guy who ran against Richard Shelby, not Doug Jones and Roy Moore, but the race before that, the Senate candidate that ran against Shelby said, there is an Alabama Democratic Party. I don't know who they are or what they do. They don't do anything. It's just Joe Reed and Nancy Worley sitting down in their fat ass in Montgomery just counting money every day. So there's no state party hardly. It's been totally decimated. The National Party doesn't care about you that much. So a lot of people are kind of on their own. There's a few things, like a few blogs, Alabama Liberal, but I'm part of the diaspora. You know, you've heard of the diaspora that goes everywhere. Well, the diaspora sometimes are like liberals in red states that have fled somewhere else and gone somewhere else. But I grew up there, and I went to Auburn University, which Princeton Review called the most conservative state school in America a couple of years ago, okay? You hear all this stuff about college campuses are so liberal, and the kids are snowflakes, and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I never experienced any of that, where you could have conservatives and protesting. The Auburn campus Republicans had hundreds of members. When they would do their meetings, they had to take out a whole stadium to put all their members in it. The campus Democrats, it was 12 people. I mean, we had like you'd go there and they'd have to give you pizza to get you there, and it was like brand X because they couldn't afford anything better. And Republicans don't give out pizza because they don't want to give out handouts or anything like that. But I mean, you're surrounded by conservatives. I mean, you've got your social conservatives, which is the majority of everybody, and your fiscal conservatives who don't want to pay for anything. So it's like you hear about stories like Flint, Michigan all the time. Well, that's Alabama. I mean, I don't think there's any way in the world they're not dumping toxic sludge into our water. It's just that nobody gives a shit. The national media doesn't cover it. They don't want to step foot in Alabama. They won't go there unless there's some kind of big thing like a tornado or a Trump rally. One of those two things has to happen for them to even cover Alabama. And we have skin in the game in these issues in a way that a lot of coastal elites don't. They talk about abortion and things like that, but is their clinics really going to be shut down? No, not anytime soon. But Alabama's might, because the state parties and the state governments, they're shutting down red state abortion clinics left and right. Texas, I think I read somewhere that they've got like less than 10 abortion clinics for a state that's the second most populated after California. I mean, they've almost got the population of the entire country of Canada, and they've got a gigantic area to cover, okay? Texas is a unit of measurement. You ever seen a space movie where they're like, how big is that asteroid? It's the size of Texas. Oh, fuck. That's big. That's big, you know? And I just think that we know, like, if the last few abortion clinics in the Southeast are closed, people there will have to get on an airplane to go have an abortion. Think about how crazy that is, a destination abortion. That's nuts, you know? So they're skin in the game in a very real way. And you hear people say, the Chicago political machine, it's bare knuckle, it's so dirty. San Francisco, Gavin Newsom, he had to come up through the San Francisco political machine. It's like, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. I mean, respectfully, like, you got to get through Barbara Boxer, and that's your bare knuckle brawls. I mean, in Alabama, the last governor that we had was almost impeached and resigned to get out of a corruption scandal that included a Senate candidate, Luther Strange, a sitting senator, Luther Strange, who was the attorney general that was supposed to prosecute him, and the head of the state police. So it involved all these high-level people. Paul Hubbard, the ex-speaker of the House, was indicted on multiple counts of corruption for something it had no bearing on that, wasn't connected to it at all. And Roy Moore was the head of the Supreme Court, and he was forced out. They had to get federal troops to take him off the bench. So you had the head of the state judiciary, the head of the state legislature, and the head of the executive branch that were all involved in scandals at the same time, and it's still a red state. Like, people still are not like, oh yeah. And you see minor stories like that all the time. I mean, local races and things, Republicans will harass people, or they'll threaten them, or there'll be some kind of blowback. A guy who ran for state representative seat as a Democrat a couple of cycles ago, he's been audited every fucking year since he ran against this guy that beat him as a Republican. And they find ways to mess with people. We're really the commandos that you want on the front line, and it's a little frustrating that National Democrats don't recognize that and don't put us forward. I think there's a reason that between the 60s period all the way up to Obama, when Democrats were almost unelectable nationally, what did you have? 3 Democratic presidents from the Southeast, LBJ, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, because they had already been through so much to get out there and get on the stage. And then they get there and, they're not as liberal as we thought that. Fuck you. You don't know what they went through. You don't know what they've been through. And you just really don't know how hard it is. When you grow up in Brooklyn or San Francisco or something like that, and 95% of people share your beliefs, and, you know, the debate then is like, is Me Too targeting the right people, or is it everybody's innocent, or only some people are innocent? And then Alabama, it's more like, yeah, you're right, we should shut down every abortion clinic we got. That's a good idea. You can't understand what we're really going through. And even if we look more conservative to you, a lot of people say I'm not even a real liberal, and to Alabama standards, I'm like to the left of Bernie Sanders. I mean, you just can't really get it. You don't understand what it is and what we're going through. These are the troops you want on the front line of the ideological battle. But we don't get a lot of support, even from the national media. You've seen all these things where now, like Sarah Silverman or the Schuyler brothers, those twin brother comedians, they'll go into the heartland. Like, we're going out into America like it's some anthropological exercise. You know, like there's not a fucking Starbucks in Birmingham or something like that. It's not basically the same place or whatever, but they go into the heartland and we'll talk to the rednecks. We'll figure out what's happening here or something. Very condescending if you think about it, what they're doing, rather than just take people like me and put them out there and say, we'll give you a platform to talk. I think we know that the national media is not going to do that. I don't want to say elites, I don't want to say that, but I don't know, the pundit mill where a lot of these pundits and people come from, they don't include me. And I think it's because you can't control somebody like me. I mean, when you have people that are from states that are extremely poor, like you, MSNBC, you're a host on there, they tell Lawrence McDonald, be like, Lawrence, you better do what we tell you to do, or you're going to go from 10 million to 5 million. You told me that $5 million. What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, most people in Alabama, they don't make $30,000 a year. So to me, like $3 million that's a century's worth of wages in Alabama wages or whatever. So to go from 10 million to 5 million is not such a big deal. But a big pundit, a national media pundit who goes from 10 million, they want to get to 50 million. And I know somebody like me will never get to that. But if you got to 3 million, I'd be happy enough that I'm like, I'm going to say what I want to. You can fire me. This is more money than I've ever had. You know, I mean, $3 million, my God, what could you not get me to do for that amount of money? And you save it, and that's the end or something. So you can't take something away from me. And I think that's why I'm not really relying on the national media or people like that to help me get big and get me out there. They're just going to take fucking Fran Lebowitz and be like, oh, we'll put her in Mississippi with a microphone and see what happens, rather than get somebody who knows that area and put them in New York to tell you what's happening in there. So the state Democratic Party doesn't exist. The National Democrats don't care about you. So you're kind of on your own out there, you know, like you've got a few other commandos and things like that. But it feels more like an insurgency movement in a state that probably is, I would say, at least 30 to 40% Democratic.